I've been a slave all my life, waiting to die, to live for a miracle. But I'm done waiting.
It was remarkable to think that this is the first television series that's been made about the Underground Railroad. Why do you think that is, and why do you think this show has connected with an audience?
I think that people, which was a lot when we were pitching it to different networks, that they were afraid of the idea of coming back to slavery week after week. And from the beginning, we said that this was going to be a thriller. It's not about the occupation, it's about the revolution. And I think for us, we knew that it could be exciting, it could be deep, and it could be all that stuff. And I feel like that's the best kind of TV. That's the kind of TV I love.
The interpersonal stories, both between the slaves but also between the owners, it feels like as you watch this, it's a recognition of slavery enslaved everyone.
I think that for us, it was really important. I think once we were starting to do the research and we really started to realize, I think, this kind of void of seeing those who were enslaved have personal agency, have their own stories, love, laugh, cry, suffer. And I think for us, you know, we just kept reading story after story where we're just like, this is amazing. We couldn't make this kind of stuff up.
How much did you guys draw from the reality? And where did you find those stories?
I mean, almost everything kind of has a root in something we read or something we listened to. William Still, who's a character in our show, you know, he collected slave narratives. He made sure he understood people's stories, and then he hid them in a graveyard until it was long over. So it's a story that had to be secretive by nature. But we found these great Library of Congress, you know, narratives to listen to of people who are actually there. And almost every story we'd have, we'd be like, oh, that's that character, or oh, now we have to create a new character because this is amazing. So it's this treasure trove if you knew how to look, and we have seasons and seasons worth of stories we still want to tell.
How do you keep all those narratives flowing through a story?
I think it's easy because we have so much material to start with, and I think what you want is every character to be complicated. You want them to surprise you when you're writing, when you're watching, and I think that that's what we seek out is what's surprising, what's the next thing that this character is telling us has to happen, but feels like, oh my God, that's happening?
I think we're telling part of a struggle that's still going on, and I think that's important. It's kind of amazing what we found that either by accident or on purpose that is important, is relevant today. I mean, we were looking at some papers kind of describing why slavery had to exist for the economy, and I swear to God, you could find and replace certain words, and it's a case against the minimum wage being raised. So I think there's just still a lot of metaphor, again, on purpose or completely by accident, that exists, sadly.
You seen any runaways around here? You know I wouldn't tell you if I had.
It's very interesting the way you don't fall prey to the dehumanization on either side. So the slave hunters, Christopher is a slave hunter, you seeing the relationship with him and his son develop, the physical pain he goes through. Do you worry that there might be a case where people start sympathizing with that character?
No, I think we want them to see them as human beings because we don't want to let anyone off the hook. I mean, people did these horrible things. They were people that laughed and loved and had families. And they had rationalizations. Some of them were horrible, but you need to kind of look these people straight in the eye as people.
What, for lack of a better term, what liberties did you guys take to bring this so you thought a 2016 audience would, as they have, found it so accessible?
One of the funny things is, you know, director Anthony Hemingway, who's just amazing, you know, started talking about jewel tones. And we learned that, like, for example, the dress is a little more colorful than you've seen those sepia tones and other, you know, slave pieces. We found out that you couldn't do a subtle tone and dye. So there were really bright greens and really bright blues. And I think what we wanted to do is just kind of, again, take the picture off the wall and live in the Instagram version of it.
Of course, John Legend is one of the EPs on this, and John's in charge of a lot of the music. How do you think that affects the tone? I mean, for me, when I'm watching it, it creates an urgency that is so there, as opposed to, and no disrespect to someone like a Ken Burns, but besides using the historical accurate music, this makes me feel like I'm in the moment.
Well, we said from the beginning we wanted to be bold, both visually for this time period, storytelling-wise, and musically. And we said we wanted to kind of use music to bridge the gap and make it feel more present. And I think John came in and he just got that right away, and he was ready to take a risk in picking different song choices. And he would come into all the music meetings and he would sit there and he would say, like, there's a scene in the first episode with John where he's giving his speech, and he was like, it would be great if we put some white stripes or something like that underneath that. And of course we couldn't afford white stripes, but we got alternatives, and it really picked the scenes up. It makes it feel, like you said, urgent and contemporary.